Hello and welcome back to the Transfer Flow, and on today's episode, Manchester United hand Liverpool a fourth consecutive loss, but what worked and what didn't in Amorim's approach? We check in on Manchester City and the weirdness of Erling Haaland, asking if Pep's team are finally getting their act together. Plus, we discuss Ange out at Forest and Sean Dyche in the relegation battle, and we look at Ted's championship bets, plus the insanity of Serie A's title race. That's all on today's episode of the Transfer Flow. So, football this weekend. Football this weekend was fun. To go through it today, I'm glad that you're back with me, Ted. We miss you when you're away. And as somebody said, you are somebody who was kind of insulting us at the side. At the time did describe you as a mega brain. So I was like, oh my goodness, the mega brain is back. But here you are, mega brain, ready to go, fresh, watered, ready to talk about the weekend's action. It was a pretty good weekend of action, man. I read your Monday roundup, and I was like, man, Ted had just had his coffee when he wrote this Palace Bournemouth section, because you were jazzed writing about that game.
First of all, it was a brilliant game, but also I feel like I'm a cartoon supervillain now. So that if as the AI comes on board, we're going to keep our voices, but we're actually just going to layer in like whatever entity that we want to inhabit our particular space every single week. Maybe it's Mateta. Maybe Mateta deserves to like inhabit both of our spaces after putting up 11 shots on that game.
Yeah, man. Like that. That is kind of a wonderful story, right? Because when he first moved to the UK, like he had a lot of doubters, but he'd been really pretty good in Germany. And I remember at the time, like a load of us who'd watched him in Germany, like really wanted him to come good. But it felt like maybe because Edouard had come from Celtic and there was a kind of like home nations vibe going on, it felt like nobody really wanted it to pan out. It's kind of wonderful that he's turned out to just be one of the best strikers in the league. Incredibly smart, like really, really surprisingly strong, like decent passer as well. Like, and this weekend, I mean, it's one of those things where at the end of the game, you can't be mad at a guy who scored a hat trick, but he could have had the winner. He maybe should have had a winner in this game. It was unbelievable.
Wasn't someone just talking shit about him not being like a viable selection for the French national team? I swear to God that somebody else, probably, like as a French talking head, and this might just be because I was in France last week, was like, oh, there's no way this guy possibly deserves it. And people do not put up double-digit shots in a game like almost ever, and he's been like cooking. I don't know. So hilariously, in the gambling preview, I was like, oh, this could definitely be a draw. Like this has draw written all over it. Like the most drunken walk draw that we could possibly get to. Palace had over four expected goals against a good Bournemouth team. Like not a bad Bournemouth team, but a good Bournemouth team. It was a really great game to watch. And I was impressed with the Crystal Palace social media team for fitting that little fucker within 2 minutes. Seems impossible. Probably was, actually. Missed about a million different elements.
They've been watching Bundesliga highlights. Neil and I talk about this, how miserable it is when you see a game in the Bundesliga that's 4-3 and you go and check out the highlights and you're like, did they do it? Yeah, we got this one under 80 seconds. Don't worry. Like, that's all it's just like in the net, over. It's incredible stuff. But man, I appreciate the Palace social media guys are like, I will get you a highlights package. It will be out today. Will you like it? Question mark. Look, we're not here to talk about Crystal Palace, though I wish we were, because they're actually good fun every week. Next week, they've got Arsenal. Interesting game. Liverpool United, though, was the big game of the weekend. And I mean, this was a pretty drunk game as well as time went on. Like, first half, obviously, United get that really early goal. And they were going very, very direct. And I got in arguments with United fans on Twitter because I said that this long ball stuff, it was working sometimes. They were picking up loose balls. It also did. They were very straight long balls, and Van Dijk and Konate were just winning them. And it did also result in Gravenberch just running through the center of the pitch uncontested an awful lot. And in that first half, it felt like Liverpool were building pressure for about 20 minutes in the center of the half. But either side, I mean, they really... ultimately, I didn't really feel like I changed my opinion of Liverpool in this game. They were giving up huge chances. And, man, United made the most of them. But the second half, I don't know. You said United played well in the newsletter, and I was kind of like, I do not feel that way about this game. I'm open to having my mind changed.
So many times in football, when faced with opposition and you play poorly or you play well, you have to actually give more credit than we ever want to the opposition, right?
Sure.
United faced a Liverpool team that were chasing with a very good attack, and they were set up to attack pretty well, right? And they mostly withstood it, right? And so, like, when you face one of the best attacks in the league and you're not completely terrible, like, you probably deserve some level of credit. Now, especially in the second half, like, I kind of hated about 25 minutes of that. I was like, oh my God, they have like 9 guys deep in their own penalty box. Like, this is a recipe for like giving up goals. Like, something will happen eventually. And it did. And actually it happened sort of like off of a second phase that ended up being a vertical ball, and then Gakpo was there to just finish it off. So like, but you're not going to play well for the entirety of 90 minutes against any good team in the Premier League. I just don't think that that's possible anymore. I don't think that anybody can do it. So I think that, you know, given the circumstances, you're at Anfield, you are just trying to sort of like be resilient and then counter and pick up, you know, a free goal to make it 2-0. Like, I thought that was actually pretty good. They had a time where the players dropped too deep, and I suspect Amorim probably hated that time. Like, he would have said that they were too deep as well. Like, get the fuck out of the penalty box and defend higher. But overall, I thought that wasn't so bad. But I also thought that Liverpool, you know, for good chunks of this played pretty well in the attacking space, but they obviously were allowed to attack more than they should have been. I thought it was a good game, and you know, so many times you're like, oh God, it was a 1-2 in this big game, and like neither team was very good. I'm like, I actually thought both teams were pretty good, and if we took this as like, you know, something that should be on show for an advertisement for the Premier League, it was a good match.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, and it was absolute carnage as it went on. I mean, really, my issue, I guess, is that in the second half, I thought, why can neither one of these teams just hold the ball? Like, United were not pressing Liverpool, but Liverpool's pass completion in this game was pretty low by their standards. Like, it was just about 80%. And they only were that low 8 times last season in 56 games. 2 of those against Arsenal, 2 of those against PSG, Chelsea, City, and then 1 weird game against Wolves. So 7 times. 7.
I believe you, whatever number you say.
Yeah, so I was like, why is that happened in this game where I didn't think that United pressed particularly aggressively or well? And in the second half, I think after Gravenberch goes off, he and Szoboszlai are just the guys who keep things ticking over, moving downhill, I mean, I know this all sounds like kind of like woo-woo shit, right? But they are the players who keep the team calm and believing that they are building pressure. And generally speaking, that is what they do. And as the second half went on, when he went off and when Man United brought Ugarte on, I thought, oh, at this point, like neither one of these teams has any control over this game at all. And Slot, even, it felt like he kind of realized that he'd maybe made an error when he put on a bunch of guys and then was like, I'm actually going to take off Isak. We can't do the Isak Ekitike or the forwards thing. It's not worth it.
No, but nothing sticks on a guy at the moment, and they'll double team anybody that is capable of sticking. So 2 points about that. One, last year's not the same as this year at all, right? Like that team was capable of retaining the ball, and this team is probably short a player or two. Mike Goodman had a great point, or it was one of the mics had a great point about one moment in this game where Szoboszlai got on the ball sort of as like a central defensive midfielder. So he was almost a playmaking midfielder, and he went to cycle it out to a right back as he normally would. And then he realized that he was the right back, and he cycled it back. He cycled it back to the center back, and then shuffled back to the position that he should have been in the first place. And you're like, that is an element about how used to these particular positional things that these players are, and a distinction about what they're not quite right now. So they are putting a playmaker at right back more often than they might have before. I guess that's patterns that they're used to playing, and like the whole team's sort of used to that. And that's Szoboszlai now, and he might be a very good right back, but he's not fully cooked on that. He's not the end product that you would expect. And so I think that regularly, this is literally the difference that Liverpool have. They are not ball dominant in the way that they were last year. Robertson was better at maintaining possession. Kirkaj is like a different dude. So I think that, you know, they have done really interesting things. They have lots of interesting parts, but they are not parts that slotted into the same pie that was there before. And so the taste is a little bit weird. And you're going to need to cook it a few different times in order to come up with something that actually tastes great from the new composite parts, as opposed to being like, this is an olive and cheese and pear and peach pie. And you're like, I don't even know what the fuck that's supposed to taste like, but it's kind of gross.
With this in mind, then, do you feel that in the early stages of the season, is it more likely that the more settled sides will look better, and then as the season goes on, we might see a gap kind of narrow between them? Because some of these teams, right, Spurs, for example, you look at Spurs, and okay, they suffer from not having that many creative players around the box. I know that Kim just like is...
Oh no, Kim hates the fact that they can't pass.
Yeah, sure.
Like creative players, they've got those. Like Kudus does weird shit, and then the ball fails over and over again. They have some creative players, but they cannot pass through most of that middle and front.
Sure. I would say Kudus, when you say he's a creative, he's an imaginative player. But is he creative in the sense of creating actual things? Like, I don't know. But he's got, I would say he has a dreamer's soul, like, to be sure. But like, you look at a team like that and you also think, okay, these guys don't have connections either. They're learning to play together. Mm-hmm. And so with these teams that have brought in a lot of players, will we expect them therefore to raise their performance level, and maybe for the teams that are pulling away a bit at the moment that have been more settled to maybe settle back a bit as the season goes on?
Absolutely. And this is also one of the reasons why Pep always insists on getting players in right at the start of preseason. And they have been so good at it. They almost never bring in players late in the window. They're not that type of team, but also he hates it because so much tactical learning happens in those early sessions, in preseason, in the repetition over and over and over again. And he gets time and energy without pressure to be able to coach them. But once you get into City's season or Liverpool's season or any of these teams' seasons where they're in Europe, you get almost no real tactical training time. And you cannot do like individual role play stuff because there are not the minutes to be able to do it. So this is why over the course of the season, especially as they get out of these different competitions, you'll get some more time to do some teaching. These teams will take more time to mature. Every once in a while, you'll find them sort of magically fit together in weird ways, but I'm not sure that that's going to be the case for any of these. Well, I think it hasn't. And I think last week in the newsletter, we talked explicitly about how everybody seems to be taking a long time to bed in, partly because the Premier League's so chaotic this year.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that might benefit these sides, therefore, that I guess that are playing a style that suits that. Bournemouth are quite happy in the chaos, right? Like they kind of built to cope with that really well. And Palace are doing well with it too, though obviously most of their games they have taken the lead in, which helps them too. So the chaos is maybe a little bit on their side. Yeah, man, like this game, I definitely think that if somebody didn't watch it, they should go and check out the highlights. But at the end of it, I did still think, why do United's midfield not know where to stand? Like, Bruno is not a central midfielder, but he and Ugarte seem to play on a vertical line like most of the time.
You should never do that.
Pass so easily. It's so infuriating. And then at the end of the game, I thought, you know what? Cunha has basically won this game for them by just being a pressure release valve like the last 20 minutes, because Šeško, nothing was sticking to him. And Burmo was gassed, Ahmad was off, and it was just Cunha up against four guys, tunneling through them. And fortunately, that guy is big and strong and smart and skillful. Even if we didn't love the deal, he's a good player. And in this game, he did a great job for them.
Yeah, so they had Mbomo score very early on something that felt like it might have been a little bit lucky. Like it kind of went through the keeper, which is pretty unusual and a pretty good keeper. But yeah, I think Cunha looked quite good in those circumstances. And again, we did not hate the player. That's not what we were saying about it. It was the price and sort of the justification for what happened there as the issue. But you're right. He looked really good in this match. And, even you figure you're going to get a few good years out of him, but then those last couple of years might tail off, et cetera, et cetera. Like the justification's out there. In this game, though, Liverpool had a tough time dealing with him. He was, as you talked about, when you get in these late game situations, and God, it feels like it's such a Barclays Premier League thing We're like, oh wow, everybody's tired, and the ball just keeps going this way and that way and this way and that way.
Yeah.
And those are fun games to watch because they're terrifying as a fan if you're like part of it, or they're exciting as a neutral because you're like, oh, any one of these things could be a goal. And then eventually, like everybody gets really tired and like things settle down for a little bit, and then you get a push at the end. I have been cautiously optimistic about Manchester United for most of the season. They looked vaguely competent. They do not look considerably less competent than before. They nearly 15 shots to 10. Like, these are vaguely competent numbers. So a win away at Anfield, possibly a generous one, but looks pretty good. And the thing that we have said about them is that the attack looks considerably better than it did last year. But now they need to learn how to defend properly. And they are not a good defensive team. They're barely an okay defensive team. And so that's going to create a lot of matches just like this one.
Yeah. And they've got some interesting fixtures coming up, which I think might be quite indicative of where they really are. You know, they've got Brighton at home next. That's an interesting game. How do they cope with that? Are they going to try and run out this same game plan against a Brighton defense that hasn't really been great in the air so far, with Coppola aside, who's like just one beanpole who wins every header? They've got Forest away. Who knows? And then they've got Spurs away. Who knows? So it'll be interesting to see how they come through those. But I would, I think, be not doing my job if I didn't ask you about the winning goal in this game, like a second phase set piece on Harry Maguire's enormous head. You must have enjoyed this.
I did. And it looks like it was part of an England plan that they just, instituted. The ball comes back pretty quickly. There's I can't remember if it's inverted cross or not, but you typically like an inverted cross to the far post because it gets a vertical swing in toward the goalkeeper. It's very, very difficult for them to come cut that out. And then they've got three guys back on the far post. So like they get an overload to that side. If you know that it's coming, that's a great way to coach them. I was actually talking to a couple of people involved in set pieces, or close to people involved in the set pieces at the Premier League, who do not work there regularly in the last couple of weeks. And they're like, I cannot believe the amount of detail that these players will absorb once you get the culture right on those set pieces. And so many times it's like, all right, if the first ball is cleared to one of the two players that are up top, so usually on either side of the D, like, this is what we're going to do. Sometimes it'll shift back down to the corner taker. If it's over there, he's got to make sure that he's on side and possibly in a covering position. And then we'll cycle it back in that kind of in-swinging cross. Or sometimes it'll go the other way around. What is the second plan after the first ball? Because so many teams barely get to the first plan. And these teams are not that way anymore. And the coaches have bought in, like Thomas Frank giving press conferences where he's like, a third of the goals are scored from set pieces. Like, why would you not spend a lot more time training that every single year, especially since it's something that you are more in control of? So I really liked it. And I think that we are just seeing it all the time, and we are seeing long throws all the time. Like, it's not an argument. It's not like you can push back on it. It's teams have bought into this whole hog, and they just realized that, oh yeah, we just fucked it up for the last 20 years, but we're going to get on board now because, today's better than tomorrow.
Yeah, sure. So they were talking about training it, and we talk about training set pieces, a reasonable amount on this podcast. But I think, again, to shout out Mike Goodman, he made the point in this game that as Liverpool were chasing the game late on, they had Kirkers on the pitch, they had Frimpong on the pitch, they had all their attacking midfielders on the pitch. At a certain stage, you just don't have the guys there who are going to be good at defending set pieces, right?
Or ones that are good at attacking set pieces, because if you've got the smaller attacking players, like, they might be missing that.
So if you're counseling a manager on how to approach this sort of thing, is trying to make sure that you've got the right complement of aerial presences on the pitch, despite the substitutions that you're doing, is that something that you would be kind of pushing them to consider?
There, at some point, needs to be conversations amongst the staff. And this is where, again, the Premier League is going to start to represent more of the NFL style thing. In the NFL, there are these situations called, there's a clock manager, effectively. And there's also someone that's like a game situation manager. So, you get down to the 2-minute warning where you've only got so much time. There's somebody trying to help out with these things. Hey, coach, we need to take a time out here to manage this thing. Plenty of times there's a person that is actually a highly probable almost like a poker player element, where he's like, if this happens, then this is what our next situation looks like. This is the situation where we're going for it fourth down. Oh, this is only a 3 down situation, et cetera, et cetera. It feels really complicated, right? And that's because it is. And it's complicated on something that has a time clock on it too. So like you only have so many seconds to make decisions. It's something you need to prep for outside of any sort of game situation, so you're able to cleanly make these decisions and have these discussions in very few words when the time comes. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this and why it sounds weird is because the same thing is what you're talking about here in a situation where we know there are going to be set pieces. Who do we have that can do delivery? Do we have people that can do long throws? Do we have people that can attack these balls from set pieces? Are we cannibalizing some of our potential advantage or giving up an advantage to an opponent if we make certain substitutions in this game situation? Coach, if we do that, then this happens, But for the most part, that never occurs in the Premier League. No one is empowered with that type of information. It would either happen amongst the small group there, or it wouldn't even occur to them. Wouldn't even occur because it's not a thing that they've learned to be aware of. So right now, it looks like this and is very narrow. You are exactly right in pointing out that it can be a problem, especially when you have quite different sets of subs that you can bring in. In the future, it will probably look like this, but we are a large gap outside of maybe 1 or 2 clubs of being able to do that. And those clubs often are just putting their recruitment into similar structured players, whether they're similar heights, similar abilities, whatever, so that they limit the complexity of those choices for themselves.
Is this an area where we can expect, therefore, that maybe some of the teams that are owned by people who also own American football teams, like, for example, Arsenal, might be trying to benefit from that cross-pollination? Because obviously we know that Pep Guardiola has done this in the past, or has spoken about it in the past. We've got to assume more managers than Pep are doing it, where they go and talk to rugby coaches and water polo coaches and all this kind of stuff. It feels like I guess professionalization of coaching is maybe not the thing, but breaking this into more discrete areas and understanding that coaching is something you want to put more money and more numbers into seems like an obvious thing to do.
Absolutely. And so few of these coaches outside of the Premier League will take on board feedback on their coaching, but that should be somebody's role. You're like, oh, this drill that you're doing here in training, like, what if you adjusted it a little bit to have like the game model and the things that we care about executing a little more often in this way? Would that be better? And it's a question. And it's a question that should be asked all the time because everybody can probably get better at their jobs, right? And Mikel Arteta is actually a very good learner. I'm not trying to make this an Arsenal podcast, although they did win a nice little game in the weekend. I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute. But Mikel Arteta, the reason why he ended up sticking around is because he's a very willing learner and he's smart and he's willing to let some element of people ask questions. And this is true from before he ever left the club. People really liked this element about him. Then he went to Pep, and then he was like part of the job interview process. And they're like, actually, this guy's really bright. I think he's going to progress. Now, over the course of those first 3 years, he had lots of fuck ups. There's just in like the things that he thought, right? Like at some point, it was almost like a David Moyesian. The more crosses we get in, the better the chances we're going to be. We're going to score those eventually, right? And then somebody finally had to talk to him. Was like, Coach, crosses are a really inefficient way to create goals. Maybe we should do something else. And nowadays, when you look at him, and look at the team and actually see some of the insights that they let leak out, you're like, oh, wow. Like he really gets how to, one, limit opposition chances, especially limit the ball in valuable areas. And two, how do we repetitively create situations in training that represent game situations? And how do I give power and responsibility to coaches that can create these game situations better for us, right? And I think Nico Jover probably has more influence than anybody else in football of like, a secondary or tertiary coach. But it's not to say that there shouldn't be more. Maybe Thomas Frank's secondary does at Tottenham right now. I don't know who that was, but
it's such an interesting area, and it feels like I imagine will know about it before the average person watching, but it feels like we only ever hear about these things 5 years after they've started to come in. So I'm quite intrigued to see where this goes. I mean, on the topic of coaches learning or not learning, should we talk about Ange?
No, not really. Like, it's a horribly failed experiment. No, it was like, why? Like, why would you ever appoint him in preseason or not in preseason, right? Like he needs like a lot of training time to get people. His style is horribly different from Nuno's, just completely opposite ends of the scale of like what you're supposed to do. And the guy that they're now replacing him with, or like most likely replace him with, is a guy that looks very similar to Nuno's style. It just happens to be the English version of of the Portuguese middle block. That makes a lot of sense to me if it's most likely. I think Mancini would also potentially be successful there in a totally different way. It's going to be a much different melange of tactics and players, but Mancini has been pretty good as well. So I think that's also an okay possibility. But yeah, don't do something that like takes a low-key Portuguese middle block and then replace it with a guy that loves a high press and wants the center backs to be like, the best sprinters on the team. It makes no sense.
Yeah, it's a very circuitous route to arrive at another version of the guy you started the season with. I like Dyche, and I do think Dyche is a good coach, and he's obviously got this relationship with the club which they like. I'm trying to imagine him with Zinchenko as a fullback and Douglas Luiz in defensive midfield, and it's funny, but I'm not sure it's good. But
Sean Dyche and Brazilians have possibly had a particular meaning in the past, and now they have a new meaning, mostly related to football.
And Wood's in there as well, so it's the perfect combination of circumstances.
Wow, you one up me on that. You just check
giving him a long-term
Sorry. We're recording this on the day that the internet is like barfing all the time, and Patrick and I are like trying to riff on each other, but also just crossing streams in the worst way. Brazilians, Wood, and Sean Dyche. That is the headline today.
It's yeah, that's the at least the title's sorted out. The thumbnail is sorted out, I think, for sure. But yeah, like apparently Dyche is getting a quote long-term contract, which definitely seems smart. That's definitely something that Forest should be doing. It is interesting though. The reason that I wanted to talk about it just a little bit was because we've been thinking about Patreon, and we were going to talk a little bit about how much managers matter there this week. On our debut episode, how quickly you should fire an underperformer, which is also part of the research there. And so it was quite interesting to look at some of the research on, the first 10 matches of a manager and how indicative those could be of their long-term success. And getting Ange out the door, look, hiring Ange was a mistake. Getting rid of Nuno after the window closed, a mistake. But firing Ange, I'm actually completely fine with. Like this was a horrible run. He's a bad fit for them. I think Neil was counting the set piece goals that he conceded and got up to 10 allowed in 8 games.
It was amazing. It was worse than West Ham.
Oh my God. I mean, that is impressive stuff. Well, we will see what comes in next. I think at least Dyche is going to get right on that. And they're only 2 points off Burnley and Brentford. So the one thing I like is that West Ham and Forest are at least hiring like wartime consigliere. They're just like, we need a guy who's going to keep us up, which Ange is definitely not. So I thought at least these guys are taking the threat seriously, which couldn't be said when they hired Ange. Another thing I wanted to ask you about while we're here is like to check in on Man City.
Okay.
Because while a lot of the focus has been on Arsenal and Liverpool, Man City have been quietly taking care of business the last few weeks.
Indeed.
And now they're up to second, and you obviously favoured them pre-season. How are you feeling about that at the moment?
They were briefly in first, for a short period of time. And I only know this because the stupid YouTube tag was like, up to first. And I was like, wait, what? I'm looking at the expected goals table here because it is the thing that is often a good indicator of where we expect teams to sort out throughout the course of the season. The Palace one is really interesting because Palace are third in StatsBomb's expected goals table, and they're third off of the back of just this last game. Really, they would have been like seventh, and suddenly you get like over 4 expected goals against a good Bournemouth team, and the model's like, I guess we have to give that a lot of credit, but it feels like a lot. So Palace are actually third, and then City are second, and they're at about a 0.70 expected goals per 90. City are giving up 9.5 shots conceded, only 13 shots, and I think that's like the key indicator for worries around City. Like the attack is fine, but is not firing at Pep Guardiola top tier levels. And part of that is because like Haaland occupies so much of it, right? He's doing funky stuff, by the way. Like I don't know if anybody's watched him. I think a lot of people just like don't watch City anymore because they're like so sick of City being great. But the last 2 seasons of City have been fun. I like watching Pep struggle, and I like watching his adjustments in those seasons. And Haaland has just taken his game to like a fucking freeform jazz type thing. He's like Andre 3000 as a Norwegian god playing striker. That's how I feel it. Because in some places it's like, wait, why did you just do that move? And you've pulled it back. You just took a 15-meter shot from like, because like you dropped, the center backs dropped all the way with the ball, and he's like, I'm just going to stand here because I'm going to get an open shot. Or he'll just stop his run in a lot of cases, and a cross will come to his head. That's like, the center backs again follow the ball deep, and so just by the ball going, he ends up creating space for himself, which I think is actually pretty unusual. A lot of guys do not make that pause in that space. So watch the 2 goals from this weekend. You see a really nice cross from Nico O'Reilly, who I quite like and sort of started growing on me a bunch last year. But I just think that he's making very unusual decisions as a center forward of his caliber and his talent. And everything seems to work for him, partly because he could just strike the ball like the hammer of God. Like he hits the ball so hard when he gets it, and it's accurate most of the time. So City's attack is limited a bit, and that's one reason why they probably still only are the second best team in the league. And then Arsenal, nobody wants to give them credit, but they put up over 2 goals away against Fulham, who very rarely allow that type of output against them. That's a good game, even if everybody thought it was boring and they only scored because they got a set piece, and the set piece came after bad marking, which is kind of true. But no, it was an unusually good performance, and they have had unusually good performances through the start of the season. They played a fairly difficult schedule, and as of 8 matches in, they are deservedly the top team in the league.
Yeah, I think that a couple of weeks ago I said that I thought that, Newcastle away, Fulham away, and then they've got Palace at home. These have been 3 games that have been very difficult for them the last couple of seasons. Having come through 2 of them pretty creditably, the Newcastle game and this one, if they come through that Palace game as well, then I think we've got to take them super, super seriously. I mean, it's not like we're not taking them seriously, but they're still betting in as well. You look at them and you're not like, oh, okay, everybody's playing at the 95th percentile here. You're kind of like, this is a side that still looks a little bit like it's rusty in attack. It's missing Urgo, it's missing Havertz, Jesus, Madueke. Like, it's missing a lot of bodies. And the way that certain players have taken a leap forward as well. I mean, Calafiori has always been this kind of weird player. But he was pretty fantastic at moments in this game. The disallowed goal that he has, somebody put up the full minute of just watching him before he scored that disallowed goal. And it's fascinating because you get to see him go into the back line, out to the left back position, into central midfield. Then he makes a striker run. He ends up putting this ridiculous finish on a knockdown, and he's just a little bit offside. But Timber as well. Timber last season was a great stability player for Arsenal.
Yeah.
A really important passer, like actually a great one-on-one defender for them as well, but next to nothing from him in attack. This season, he's getting in the penalty area a ton. He's passing into the box a ton. Billy Carpenter pointed out, he's already got more expected goals and assists this season than he had in the whole of last season. The ability, in a way, it's almost like the Haaland thing, right? Where with Haaland, what's amazing is that we're seeing a guy who had the physical gifts to be an outstanding striker, but we've seen it wedded to the kind of learning process that you would normally see from somebody who might be a bit more physically limited, right? Who would have to learn that intelligence in order the way that Gary Lineker talks about striking, where he was like, I had to be the smartest mover because I wasn't that fast and I wasn't that strong.
Right.
Some of these players feel like they're doing a bit of that as well.
Do you know what I find really unusual, though, is that Arteta seems to have given license to one or the other of his fullbacks to go and play. So they are the one kind of free roll. They're going to gum up the middle. Like the midfielders are going to be tight. Like everything in the middle is gummed up. But because they do not want to give up anything in the middle, that's where all the responsibility lies. And because of that, that means that something has to open up to be able to attack and let somebody have license to create stuff. And it seems to be that the fullbacks, who are the wide players usually, or at least, one of the wide players, one or the other of the fullbacks has more license to sort of have fun and play. And you have to have really dynamic fullbacks in order to do that. If you don't have that, then they'll look stunted like they did last year, which felt like a constant problem unless Lewis Skelly was doing things where, again, he also had some element to roam and be able to make turns as a midfielder more than as a fullback would be able to do and get into those middle channels. So I think it's intriguing as a tactical wrinkle, and it's probably something that Liverpool miss a lot right now. But Arsenal seem to have been able to successfully do it so far. We'll see if the problem with Calafiori is he's just often injured.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, then they've got Nkapie when he comes back from injury. I mean, like they're so deep in these positions now.
This is what we said, right? So some recruitment groups have done carbon copies of the guys that they want for particular positions, so they don't have to worry about missing those skill sets. We just put the other dude in. If you can get away with it, then that's great. But some of those skill sets are so broad that it's really hard to do.
Arsenal still one open play goal conceded this season, and that was to Haaland, which doesn't count.
No, I agree.
Mateta next week, though, an interesting challenge for them. Where else do you want to go before we leave the Premier League? What else has intrigued you from this weekend? I mean, obviously we talked about Sunderland last week, and big win. Like now, 14 points kind of feels like it would be. They're going to have to play not only relegation level football. They're going to have to play like the rock bottom, absolute like misery ball in order to get relegated.
And 14 points is a lot, especially when 17th has 7, so you got twice as many points as the team that's sort of like at the edge of it. Their shot numbers are inverted, so it's about 10 shots to 13, but the expected goals is only like minus 0.21. They keep things very tight. They could stay up. Like Burnley definitely do not look like a team that are gonna end up making out, although Leeds
that was rough, man.
I lost this bet, but also like Leeds fans must be like, what the fuck? Same result, different league. Like, how does this keep happening to us? 4 shots to 19, but 2 goals to 0.
Yeah, the Leeds game this weekend and the Palace game, to me, I was like, these are like 2 games you would see from Atalanta under Gasparini back to back. Where they would like, we've had 35 shots and 5 XG, and then the next game they would absolutely crush a side and lose 2-0.
Yeah, that felt right. So Leeds are in 15th, but a positive expected goals difference and positive shot numbers as well, like 0.30. Now, obviously, it helps to play Burnley, even if you don't get the result. Like your expected goals numbers are like, wee, this is amazing. Give me more of this. So most likely go down is Burnley, even on the points total. Like Wolves are in big trouble, and they have had a pretty tricky schedule, but also, you can't give 3 points to your kind of direct relegation rivals there. And then it's just a matter of like what Nuno's able to do with West Ham. If he, has a big pull up, who knows what the bottom of the league looks like, because it's very difficult to see which of those teams are bad enough to fall out. If they kind of stay as they mostly average as minimal impact, and they're too far behind, then it's West Ham as the third, which no one obviously has a list of like those 3 teams is likely relegated, or maybe you do, and you're going to win a bunch of money from your preseason gambling because they're pretty long shots.
We had some of these. In I was on West Ham, I think. Yeah, I was on Wolves. So yeah, I mean, we can feel good about that. We can also feel good about the fact that I think a bunch of these teams, Brentford, Forest, West Ham, are going to be close enough to the relegation zone that we should expect them to maybe do some interesting things in January. And if, for example, you had a newsletter and a podcast which covered transfer news, then you'd probably be quite excited about that prospect. Let's get out of the Premier League because there's plenty of interesting football to watch around the continent, as Neil reminds us. And when I say that, obviously when Neil says the continent, he means like Antarctica or whatever. But But you obviously take an interest in the Championship, and your Championship bets have been kind of flying right now, right?
Yes. So historically, the English Championship is my best betting league. Last
Hmm.
year, it was actually the Champions League. I ended up having some longer shot bets hit that helped out a bunch. But overall, like Champions League was great for me. But if you look at all of my betting career, it's the Premier League and the Championship. And actually, over the course of time, as the Premier League lines got a little bit sharper, the Championship lines kept being useful for me anyway.
Hmm.
And if you hadn't read it, back in September, I think, or at the end of September, I wrote a reason why we write about and why we talk about gambling. And like, I have a very different
Sure.
perspective on this than everybody else. Like, I've been in the professional gambling space for a long time. I feel like the bookies got greedy. I feel like there's a bunch of bullshit going on. And I wanted to write this thing to help people become smarter bettors so that they lost less or won more money. And also, it feels good to stick it to my old industry that decided to become unfair in certain circumstances and take the bag too often. So that's why we've been
Hmm.
doing it. We've been crushing it this season, which is a little unusual given this point in the season. Usually, like the gains kind of kick in November onward through the April period of time. But yeah, the championship has been so much fun. It's always so much fun, but this year even more so than it usually is, and it's also been very lucrative for me so far.
And right now, it's like 7 points separate the top half of the table, and then 7 points separate the bottom half of the table. And then there's a little break in between. There are like 2 points in between 11th and 12th. And so you've got pretty much it's always this way in the championship where it feels like kind of almost anybody can get promoted. There's always some team there as well that is absolutely disgusting and does not deserve to be in the conversation, which is one of my favorite features of the championship as well. But this season, I mean, it does kind of look like a coronation for Coventry right now.
I cannot remember having seen a team with numbers like Coventry currently have. Now, whether that's sustainable or
Mm.
not, as I said, like they kind of look like they're the Bayern Munich of this league, which very rarely happens. Like Leeds last year was very early on, like they were likely going to get promoted. A couple of seasons ago, companies Burnley was very very good, and they had the money from the yo-yoing to like have a great set of performance numbers. Funnily enough, the year that Leeds got promoted under. Oh my God, it's just immediately left my head. Legendary Bielsa.
Bielsa.
Yes, so they got promoted against Bielsa or under Bielsa. We had a deal where their season would be free unless they got promoted that year at Satsbomb. So it was a very interesting deal. And I was like, let me figure out the EV on this because like we're going to charge them the full amount for that season if they get promoted. And what happened was we looked at the numbers and it was 95% that they were going to get promoted that year. 95%. I was like, we will take that deal. We'll take that deal in a heartbeat. Please give me more of that deal. I'll take a bonus. It's fine. Yeah, Coventry at this moment look like they are that level of productivity. I don't know because they weren't nearly that good last year. It's harder to have like real faith that this is going to continue. But it doesn't look like there are any super teams in the championship this season. Is
Mm.
not often there's like two that are really good. Ipswich look pretty good. They are not like awesome. And then Southampton like have not been putting up results under Will Still, but they're still like, half a goal a game better. They got 15 shots to 10. That feels like one where like you just got to ride that horse for a while because they are going to get there in the end of it. Um, I think the reason why you wanted to talk about the championship though is because you actually wanted to talk about your favorite region in Europe for food.
Uh, I wouldn't actually say it is,
No,
but I
you're not a
do.
pasta master.
I look, I do like it. I do
Okay.
like it. Like I'm not stupid. I'm not a madman. But like, yeah. I think Serie A is always extremely fun. If you are a messy bitch, and you like the championship, or maybe you're a messy bitch, but the championship is like not your thing, then Italian flavored drama might be for you. And Serie A right now is very very interesting. Also very very tight. You've got Max Allegri, who's top of the league with Milan. Boo, big boo.
Yeah.
But Juventus are seventh. Woo! So that's good. And actually, they're in this pack of teams like 1 to 7, but they actually have mid-table numbers. Juventus's numbers at the moment are kind of horrible. It's 4 points between seventh and first at the moment. And if you look at the expected goal difference per 90, you've got 6 teams who are between about plus 0.35 and plus 0.7. And Atalanta in there, who obviously lost Gasparini. You've got Roma, you've got Milan, you've got Inter, Napoli. Like, it's really, really interesting stuff.
I want to say, I love the fact that you started hand talking very aggressively once we started talking about Serie A. That is so like on point. It's just like, for those of you not watching the video, like Patrick's hands are fucking everywhere. It's like he wanted to give you the emphasis that you would get from Italians. Yes, exactly. Also, this league has exactly what you were talking about, which is like 3 teams that have disgusting expected goals numbers through 7 games that don't belong anywhere in the middle of the pack. And you're like, how in the world are you there? Like Sassuolo, fine, they're sort of bad, but Cremonese and Cagliari, like they're just abysmal down there near Pisa. Anyway, but the top of the table, as you say, messy bitch, but also really exciting. They were really exciting last year as well. Usually this league also has the most goals scored of the major leagues. Maybe Germany competes with them, but like they're very high scoring volume as well. Now looking at this whole set of stuff, like Bologna should fall out, although they've been quite sticky in kind of being near the top 5 for the last few years. But Bologna should fall out. Our darling Cesc Fabregas's team, Como, performing very well. Nico Paz, possibly the best player in Serie A so far this year. He's been electric as expected, and we previewed before. Then you have some weirdness and some fun. So Inter Milan, new head coach, actually by far the best expected goals, like by almost half a goal. Atalanta are second under a new coach. So the talent's still there. Some of the execution's still there, but the results haven't quite come. And then you get the muddle. And the muddle is good teams with big budgets. The muddle is Roma with Gasparini in an incredibly like slow version of it. Matthias Schule is exciting, but like we've never seen Gasparini like do low event stuff. He's reverted to like classic Italian here. I don't know what's going on, but I'm interested, but I'm a little confused. Not gonna be.
That's actually pretty good. They've got like I think Roma games through 7 games, it's been 14 expected goals for both attack and defense. So you're like 2 expected goals a game through 7 games is
they have 7 goals total and 5 wins, which is incredibly efficient.
Yes, that is efficient. That's how you should do it, Ted. We need to make that happen. But yeah, it's genuinely really fascinating. I mean, because Inter had numbers like this for the vast majority of last season.
Yeah.
And then at the end they came back to the pack and you ended up with kind of 0.8 to 0.6. Yeah, they got really tired. But the thing is they're running out a very similar 11 this season. You know, you've got Boni in for Thuram, you've got Akanji in the back line instead of Pavard. But it's otherwise like kind of an unchanged lineup, which feels like maybe not the wisest idea. Roma, I'm intrigued to see what happens. Like you'd have thought that this might be an example of like the attack starts to get up to speed with Gasparini ball and they might start flying. And if the numbers look decent right now, then that's pretty positive for them. Milan are the really interesting ones.
Yeah.
Because the defense is still like joint best in the league with Inter. But through the first 3 or 4 games, the defense was ungodly good. The defense was like Arsenal level good. I think they were at 0.4 expected goals conceded per game. And they're doing a back 3 with Pavlovic, Gabbia, Tomori. Then they've got a 3-man midfield in front of that. So it's like, which is really to protect Modric, right? So you've got Fofana and Rabiot usually either side of Modric. And then it means that you've got to rely on just a couple of guys up front, and they've been mostly running out Jimenez and Pulisic. But at some point, you've got to assume it's going to start being Pulisic Liao, who hasn't been available that much. If I were going to have a really stable, kind of boring setup that was basically all about protecting Modric so he could pass forward to 2 attackers, having those 2 attackers be Pulisic and Liao is a pretty exciting pair to have. Like Liao is one of the few guys in the world who can just create something out of absolutely nothing. Like Allegri is one of these guys who, because he is so obviously evil, you don't really want him to be as good as he is, but he is a really good coach, man. And
with the right types of players,
they look scary.
With the right types of players, Allegri can make it work. I think that he's having to overcome some issues with those attackers. Like Pulisic has been excellent. The question with Christian is always his durability in different leagues. But you know, when he can be healthy and on the ball, he's fantastic, and he will do more of the grunt work than Liao does. The issue with Liao has never been talent; it's always been work rate and willingness to have tactical discipline. Milan are interesting. I don't know if they're exciting yet, but they're interesting. And they obviously went in a particular direction last season. They wound back a bunch of that this year. Michael Cox, whose opinion about football I genuinely respect, is like, this is the best 40-year-old midfielder I've ever seen in my life. Like I can't understand that he's still doing these things about Modric. And honestly, like the fact that they signed him, I was like, that's bold. I'm not sure about that. Like I feel like he should definitely just like have one of those retirement sort of send off seasons in a smaller league. Maybe Italy is the smaller league, but he's not playing like it. He looks like he's just able to pick any pass he wants to at any moment.
But it used to be that, of course, that going to Italy, you could have a quieter retirement.
Yeah,
like Pep did, for example. But now you kind of got to. I mean, teams will protect you, but you're gonna have to. You better work, basically. So we've got Modric there, we've got De Bruyne there, who's also had an absolutely sensational start to the season. I think he's on like 11 goal involvements in 8 games, something like that.
He's what's making Napoli work right now. Like Napoli would not have like this position if he weren't connecting the dots so much. It's fun. Like people should definitely watch them, but don't expect that Inter aren't going to win this league, because if they look at all like they they have so far for the rest of the season, like they should end up running away with it.
Man, I'm intrigued though. That's what I thought last season, and
that's true.
I forgot that Conte has voodoo dolls of every other manager in the league, so that did not work out for me. I think that pretty much brings us to a close day, except to say that we do have this recording of our debut Patreon episode coming up this week. We still need questions for it. Please do drop questions in the comments below. We're always looking for interesting topics that we can cover. And this is an opportunity as well for us to cover things that are maybe not just happening in the fixtures right now. If there's a historical question that you want answered, if there's a particular player that you want us to take a deeper look at, it's a really good time to do that, especially if there's somebody on the transfer market who's intriguing you.
I have a little bit of analysis that I was going to put out on Twitter, and I realized that this would be a better space to put it. So we're do a little bit of analysis of Victor Gyökeres so far, and what I'm seeing from his play, having watched a bunch of Arsenal, and some things that I'm like, why is he doing that? And so we're going to put that in the Patreon as well.
Perfect. Well, make sure that you sign up. We will make it very, very clear when the link is ready to go. We'll be putting that out later this week, and the episode should be ready to go by the back end of the week. We're also going to be putting out a lot of our B-roll over there. So there's going to be a ton of content. Should be several videos for you a month, at least one every week, and then some B-roll as well. So plenty to look forward to. Obviously, we'll see Hayden and Neil over there too. I think that brings us to a close for today's episode, except to say like, subscribe, do all the stuff that we ask you to do every week. And thank you for being here.
There is so much gambling content this week. There are like 30 matches of English Championship and UEFA Champions League for midweek, both of which, as I said, have been my best leagues over the last course of the season and a half or whatever we're at now. So check that out if you're interested in variance betting. Do the subscribe and upgrade for us over on the newsletter. And I really need to leave and get riding because there's so much analysis that needs to be done.
Yeah, I was going to say, by the end of this week, Ted, you are going to be a husk. But thank you very much, everybody, for watching, and we will catch you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.